Hello?
Hey, Blob. It's Seymour.
Butts?
Yeah, that's my name. I was under the bleachers when you grabbed me.
Oh, you full of shit, man.
Wait, no, I want to tell you about your car's extended warranty.
Hello?
Hey, Blob. It's Bofa.
Bofa? What fucking kid were you?
Bofa D's nuts.
God damn, what do you want? I'm trying to watch Stranger Things.
First, you need to upgrade that old-ass phone.
Fuck you, dude. Fucking grabber. Oh, fuck. What do you want?
You need to record an episode about the black phone.
Damn it, I think I will.
Hey YouTube, welcome to our special YouTube exclusive episode on the Black Phone. If this is your first time with us, I'm Tone, this is John, this is Anthony, and collectively we are known as Porcelain Peak. We're a strange and scary podcast that covers the gamut of the strange and the scary. And like I said, today we are talking about the Black Phone.
But while you're here, go ahead and hit a like, hit us in the comments with your opinions about this movie. We'll talk about those in a minute. Obviously, there will be spoilers, so spoiler warning. And don't forget to hit us with a subscribe as well, so that way you don't miss out on our episodes. We post
Let us know in the comments, what's your favorite kind of phone?
Black Phone.
Black phones is one example. Ghostly phones. Let you speak to the dead.
All right, let's do some background on this fucking thing, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one directed by Scott Derrickson, who you might know as the director of Sinister and Doctor Strange.
And The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Yes.
All movies that I enjoy at some level.
Right.
varying degrees of enjoyment.
Based on a story by Joe Hill, a.k.a. Stephen King's son.
It's funny, like, watching different reviews outside of ours, like, seeing whether people decide to go, Joe Hill, son of Stephen King, or if they just want to, like, use him as his own, like, because I'm sure he's probably sick of being like, son of Stephen King. But, I mean, come on. You're writing spooky stories. You get that comparison.
Yeah. And some of the themes that are in this, I'm like, okay, you used your papas.
Felt very kingy.
Papa? Yeah. This was also written by Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill.
Yeah.
It does keep a lot of things very tight to the short story.
Tight.
Oh, you read it?
Yeah, I read the short story.
Nice.
He sent it over, and I was like 30 pages. I could pop through this real quick.
Yeah, I wanted to go in, like, with nothing but that first trailer in my mind.
Yeah, I read it after.
Yeah, so, okay.
Oh,
so, yeah, I wanted to. I'll have to get around to it and read it. But,
the players in this one. So we got Mason Thames as Finney, Madeline McGraw as Gwen, Ethan Hawke as the Grabber, Jeremy Davies as Terrence, which is Finney and Gwen's father.
Yee.
And then a couple of detectives, James Ranson as Max, that's kind of important, and then a few other kids.
Yeah, so if you saw Sinister, a lot of the same players coming back. C. Robert Cargill also co-wrote Sinister with Scott Derrickson, so they are a recurring collaboration. Also, Ethan Hawke and James Ranson both being in this.
Was he the cop?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
from
what I
Sinister. So, and then a lot of the way that this movie is shot, especially the use of some like 8mm type film, is very Sinister-like. And even Ethan Hawke called this kind of a spiritual sequel or a spiritual successor to Sinister, which I can definitely see in some of the more spoilery things. So when we get to that segment, I'll talk about it. But
even down to the wall in the basement with the crack was very much like the Sinister poster with the blood trail across it. I was like, oh, okay.
I wonder how much of that was intentional, like to tie the themes into each other, because the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I could see these being in the same universe.
Yeah.
But yeah, for those of you now joining us for the first time, or if you've been here for a while and you've heard our thoughts, when we first saw the trailer for this movie, I think we all were like, that looks fucking ridiculous. And we were not super on board, but love Ethan Hawke. I think everyone in this room is a big Ethan Hawke fan. And I love Scott Derrickson. I mean, I'm more positive on his movies than I am negative. I love Exorcism of Emily Rose, and I'm a big fan of Sinister to a point. And I thought Doctor Strange was fine. I would have liked to have seen what he was going to do with Multiverse of Madness. That originally, this movie might not have existed if he had done Multiverse of Madness, because since he left that movie for creative differences, I think he decided to go to a smaller, more Blumhouse-y project, which that's another thing we talk about a lot, is Blumhouse, and they got a fucking fancy new logo. How'd you guys feel about their...
It felt like the Marvel logo, but done with their version.
Before I realized it was Blumhouse, I was like, did that logo just use Michael Myers? They can't do that. Yeah. And then as soon as I saw the Purge people, I was like, oh, it's Blumhouse's new logo.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I always made fun of their old one for being too like complex and like too much shit going on. And then they were like, now let's just do that on top of itself and over and over. And so it's like a whole 30-second like zoom, 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 through all the spooky shit. But
So let's do a quick breakdown of what this movie's about, just in case you don't know. It's about this town in the 70s.
yeah, in Denver, Colorado.
And
78
kids,
to be exact, which
There you go.
I'm assuming is a Halloween reference.
kids are getting snatched up, missing. We don't know if they're being killed. We don't know what's going on. And all we know is that there is a man in a black van that's taking them, possibly connected to some black balloons. And then we follow Finney and Gwen and their brother and sister. And then he's heavily bullied. Their father is very abusive. And then Finney gets grabbed.
Yeah.
And that's everything that's basically in the trailer.
Yeah, and then, I mean, even the trailer went into, there are some supernatural elements. The movie is called
Right.
The Black Phone because when he does get grabbed, there is a mysterious black phone on the wall that is disconnected that starts a ring, ring, ring in.
Ring a ding ding.
And you know when that ghost line bling. And that can only mean one thing.
Do you
Done
think
got
you're
grabbed.
You're haunted.
Yeah.
Do you think the kid was like, what the fuck is that?
Oh, because
Because-
of how old the phone?
Yeah,
like
because that's even old for us.
yeah, like they had to explain to him what a rotary phone was. Yeah, I grew up with one in my house, but I grew up with my grandma, so I'm like, okay, well, I know what a rotary phone is, but I think anybody born even a couple years after me or around my time, and I'm the youngest in this group, would have no clue. But it looks cool in like a grimy old school horror, and I do think it kind of, because it's a rotary phone, it kind of lends the idea that there's some history to this phone, which the
Yeah.
movie leaves pretty vague, but there's some things I want to talk about when we get to spoilers concerning that.
I think we're there.
And the design of the phone. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is your last warning. I will say I do recommend checking this movie out. I had a good time with it. It does have some serious themes, but I would highly suggest check it out if you are into movies like this.
Yeah, same. I would recommend it. It's a good time. It's a good, I think, especially coming off of a movie like Men or something like that, it was a nice palate cleanser to watch something that's a pretty straightforward, spooky tale. And this made a much nicer date movie with my girlfriend than Men did. So I felt a lot better about this. But yeah, I would recommend it. And then also just...
Just put that bad boy up. Just in case.
yeah, trigger warning if you are sensitive to topics such as domestic abuse, abduction, obviously, and
Drug use.
bullying. Those are all big themes. Some of the things do get pretty hard to watch, especially some of the domestic abuse stuff. So I would just say, if those are things you're sensitive to, go into this movie knowing that those are big themes. But it's a good time. So yeah, let's get into
Not because of that.
yeah, not because of those things.
Last warning, spoiler alert.
Boom. Yeah.
Really, I mean, one of my biggest complaints with the trailer was how much that it looked like it gave away, and to a certain extent, it really did give a lot away. Like, it showed most of this movie.
Yeah.
Derrickson was able to make the in-between parts that we didn't see worthwhile, and so it was entertaining.
Yeah, it was like seeing the trailer was like seeing what probably, if this a short story had been done like as a short film, that's probably closer to what it would look like. And then this feels like Derrickson was able to expand out the, like you said, the in-between parts and the emotional buildup with the kids and all of that to make it so that by the time he does get grabbed, which is pretty late into the movie,
Yeah,
you
it's
have
like halfway through.
Yeah, you have a pretty strong emotional connection to him and his sister. So I appreciated those things, things that I really liked about the movie. I think that it is shot gorgeously. You talked a little bit about some of the set design with the crack in the wall, but I think that just the entire aesthetic of the movie is gorgeous. It has that nice kind of like 70s sepia tone to everything he uses in the kind of the sister's psychic dream flashbacks. He does the sinister like 8mm type film, which gives it that same creepy aesthetic that Sinister had, and then also Mark Corvin doing the music on this. He also did the music on Sinister, which I'm a huge fan of because it has that weird like tape roll beat going on throughout everything, and he does something very similar in this movie. I thought the opening credits were fucking gorgeous, and the music over them was awesome. I think that like stranger danger time period of the 70s through the 90s, like it was still a thing when I was a kid. Like don't talk to strangers. Here's a plan if a stranger tries to pick you up, that kind of thing. The milk cartons, like we've seen movies like Summer of '84 do that really well recently. This is something that I think revisits that time period, does it very well, really builds up that kind of that looming dread over a town that happens when somebody like the grabber exists. So that's something that I liked. I really, really liked I loved the performances. It was probably my favorite part of the movie, and I'm always impressed with. It seems like we're getting a dearth of great child performances in TV and in movies recently, where I'm just like, that kid knows how to act. And I mean, really, the different stages that these actors have to go through throughout the movie and the character arcs that they take, I'm amazed they were able to hit all the beats as successfully as they did. I was like, yeah, I wish Ethan Hawke was in this movie more. That would be nice. But I am really digging these kids, and I think the performances are really good.
I think what little he is in it, he kills it, though. Because anytime he's on screen, I was glued because he's changing his cadence between masks that he's wearing, and even during the one mask that he's wearing.
It made me think of like a much subtler like James McAvoy in Split, where like there's obviously some sort of change in personality happening, but it's so much subtler and more mysterious than as like kind of fanciful and goofy it gets in Split.
There's so much subtext to this. We don't really know why he grabs.
Yeah.
We don't know what his goal is throughout the entire thing. We don't know why he wears the mask, what the changes to the mask mean, because sometimes it's happy, sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's his eyes are open, and
which
then
I thought
at
was
the
such a
end, when he takes the mask off completely, we don't know why he freaks out.
Yeah.
The mask design itself is just fantastic.
Designed by Tom Savini.
Yeah, the fact that
Is it?
Yeah.
that makes a fuck ton of sense. Because
Which
it's terrifying.
before I had seen the movie, I was like, really? Tom Savini made just that like boring looking devil mask? And then as soon as I realized that it was in two pieces and he could swap out parts of it, I was like, oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That,
it's fucking
from the mind of Tom
genius.
Savini.
Yeah. But yeah,
That's why he is one of the greatest.
yeah, the mask adds a lot of flavor. The short story doesn't have it. The character seems very different. It doesn't have the name of the grabber and actually is a named character. I like the mystery in the movie a little better.
And I think that's something that a lot of people will probably end up having an issue with, is how ambiguous it leaves things. But it reminded me, I mean, obviously the movie is paying tribute to Halloween in that it's in 1978, but also I think in the way it treats the grabber, because there are so many scenes of the kids walking around the neighborhood and you just see his van, and it reminds me of when you see Michael Myers wandering through Haddonfield in the beginning of Halloween, and it's setting that dread of like, when is he going to grab his next victim? And then I love the way it has him when he does grab those first few kids. You get a little bit of build up between Finney and them, which is something that I was not expecting from the trailer. I thought he was just going to be hearing all these random kids he didn't know, and I loved that emotional connection between him and the kids that were being grabbed.
Yeah.
And it sets that up a little bit, and then when they get grabbed, it's very surreal and weird because you don't really see it happen. It's usually them like wandering up. You see the van, you see them out of focus, get out, and then it cuts, and then they're gone, and then it's the whole town like,
up in arms with search parties.
But I think the ambiguity behind the grabber will bother a lot of people because they want the mythology explained, because the performance is interesting enough that you want to know why this guy is the way that he is, and the movie does not give you any answers, really. You can draw some conclusions by saying that there's probably a parallel between the abuse that Finney and his sister are going through and some sort of abuse that the grabber and his brother Max went through, because his brother is now an addict and a fucking crazy conspiracy theorist. And he is obviously
right.
But right, yeah, more right than he ever realizes until it's too late. But
he paved the way for guys like us to do our true crime shit.
Yeah, and then
thanks, Max.
Yeah, I ended up paving the floor of that fucking basement.
Yeah, that was tight. That's some creep shit right there. I was like,
but
ooh.
the way the grabber sits upstairs and does the naughty boy routine that we learn about the whole ritual, and he's got the belt and he's all shirtless sitting up there like the angry dad. Like obviously, I think it's supposed to parallel the belting of the sister when she's in trouble, and so I think you're supposed to assume that the grabber is
targeting kids
to kind of replicate the abuse that he went through when he was a kid. And he seems to have more of like an angry father persona and then a scared little boy persona. So I think the movie wants you to do a little bit of work to get more, and I think that might bother some people, but I appreciated it.
Yeah, I mean, and it could even be a potential like with the masks and everything changing, it could be like almost like a DID situation where he's changing it based on the personality that he's cultivated during that time, which is why when he's doing more aggressive things, like he removes part of the mask, or he has like an angry face that he throws on when he's, kind of in that dad mode or whatever. So I think there's a possibility that could be a connection to that. And I know that it's been a really popular topic, especially with Moon Knight and with something like Split, that really kind of brought that to light as something that could be a functional story beat. I also think that not just the performances, but the bond between the person that played Finney and the person that played Gwen are fantastic. Their relationship is really, really cool to see.
She was so fucking
oh
funny.
My God,
you fucking fart knocker.
She reminded me
so good.
She reminded me of like a more palatable version of the girl from Psycho Gorman.
Yeah, absolutely,
the sister.
100%.
Yeah, it was like she was a more like audience friendly version of that character.
Yeah, I'm the grabber. I was like, dude. And then what did she say to God? What the fuck?
And then that realization, she's
Jesus?
like, maybe you're not even real.
Yeah,
But that felt very
good.
Stephen King, her whole character, and the idea of like the parent. It felt very Carrie, like the parent who doesn't really like believe and is kind of being abusive because she's expressing this power.
Another thing that's ambiguous too is her power. We have no idea what it is, where it comes from. Apparently, it was inherited.
Yeah, which made me wonder: is this something like The Shining, where she kind of
she has the shine?
Yeah, she has the shine, and then does her brother also, and is that why he's able to hear the voices on the phone? It's kind of, I mean, it's obviously left ambiguous as to how the phone works or what's going on with it.
Because not everybody can hear it, which the kids explained. Like, we couldn't hear it, he can sometimes hear it, and you can hear it.
So then is it something like the Thestrals in Harry Potter, where it's like if you've been through childhood trauma, can you then hear the phone? And that's what another connection that I thought between Finney and Ethan Hawke's character is, that maybe he could hear the phone, and that phone is from when he was in the basement when he was a kid, being abused by his father. And that phone, that's why he leaves that phone on the wall, because as a kid maybe it was some sort of comfort for him, or maybe it says that he ignored it, which maybe saying he always repressed his trauma and like never really worked through it. And Finney's character ends up making the complete journey through his trauma, obviously, and beats the fucking shit out of Ethan Hawke with the black phone.
Do they give any more background in the story about any of that stuff?
No, they don't. So Finney's character is much more fleshed out in this version.
Wow.
But the actual story itself, the grabber is almost all of the same dialogue.
Well, okay.
The phone calls are a little different. Bruce Yamada is still a character, and they still played each other in baseball, but he had it was a different phrase. Like the "your arm is mint" line was replaced with "you're dirty," as in like you're you're so good it's disgusting kind of a thing.
Okay.
But it's still a similar relationship. There is no character like the one who's his friend, the one who beats the shit out of that fucking big ass dude.
Ricky? Is it Ricky?
Robin? Is it Robin?
It's Robin.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, but there's no Robin character or anything like that. And they don't really. There's no like preamble. He talks to a couple of different kids, but there isn't any extra description. It's literally Bruce talks to him, says put dirt in the receiver of the phone, and then he comes back down and beats the shit out of him. But I still think that they flesh things out so much more with the movie. I think that they did a really solid job of filling in the gaps, because they mention in the story that his sister is like, he dreams that his sister's trying to find him. And over the phone Bruce confirms you were right, she is trying to find you. She's been riding out around this street trying to find you.
Yeah, and dressed in her best
yeah. I was like, that's obviously got to be
that right, then the year, and then the scene where Gwen's in the bathtub was very like Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street. I was like, all right.
And then they also have the like Quickie Mart or whatever that they go to is called Ellison, which was Ethan Hawke's character name in Sinister.
Yeah, and then it was grab and go. I was like, come on, guys.
A little on the nose.
I was cracking up though. I was like, whatever.
So what did you guys think of the actual scares in the movie? Because I know that some of the complaints that I've heard are that it's too jump scare heavy. I didn't have too much of a problem with it, because I felt like the jump scares that were there weren't like, it wasn't like a person just walking in and like surprising somebody. It was always one of the kids like the dead kids showing up or whatever. And I loved the idea that he couldn't see the kids, that they're kind of like just floating around in this room with him, like stuck in this limbo. It reminded me of Sinister, because that's, now that we're in the spoilers, that's where I could see these movies connecting, is that the kids in limbo is very like Sinister and Sinister 2. And so because the story is also focused on dead kids, it felt like the Gabagool was going to show up at any moment and be like, I've been behind the whole thing.
They should have had Vincent D'Onofrio play the brother.
Yeah.
That would have been good.
Or one of the cops.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that they were well designed. I felt like there wasn't anything that was an out of place jump scare, and I felt like it did all of the things that I expect for something like this to try to create tension, where it adds the jump scares, and then it gives you small release valves with like the sister and her fucking potty mouth, and it gives you those moments where there's little things that build up one type of tension, like the abuse and the bullying and all those things. Those add like a almost more of a day-to-day tension. And then there's the stuff like the floating kids and the things popping out of nowhere and shit like that, and those add like an actual like existential dread tension. So it marries those two together, hits you with a big scare, and then gives you a little comedic relief to help get through it. And I think that balance is really great for an easy to watch horror film.
Yeah.
I mean, as permitting that you don't fall into the category of any of those triggers. But
Right.
I do think that comparing this to something like an A24 horror film where there's that constant steady buildup of tension that never relieves, which can be really frustrating sometimes to watch if you're not in the right mood for it, I feel like this is something that I could probably throw on at any time and still have similar feelings as I did when I watched it.
This is much more in the vein of something like a Conjuring movie, where it's a fun popcorn horror movie without using popcorn horror as like some sort of like pejorative term or like negative thing toward this. But I mean, really, it is like I agree. I would put The Black Phone on if I just wanted like a fun, not gonna fuck my brain up horror movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's a benefit to the movie, but there also are parts of it, which I'll get into, like things that I didn't like as much about the movie, is I do feel like some of the elements could have been pushed further. It did feel a little bit surface for a lot of it. But what did you think of the way the scares were handled in the movie?
I thought it was mostly jump scares, but I think similar to what John's saying, it didn't bother me just because they felt earned. It wasn't the cat, or it wasn't anything completely out of left field. It was mostly musical stings with the kid or with someone standing behind it, and so it worked for me. Like, one of them got me for sure, and then a couple of them I was like, "Oh, you almost got me, you motherfuckers!"
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I think one got me pretty good and got Adrienne pretty good, and then she, even when we walked out, she was like, "I am surprised." She was like, "I never jump at horror movies, but that got me a couple times."
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah." So I mean, they were at least well constructed jump scares,
And they didn't follow all of the tropes either. They didn't hit you with like the music crescendo into silence and then wah.
Yeah.
They built up in a way where you weren't always expecting it, which I think it adds value to a jump scare for me.
Yeah. I didn't have too many issues with the movie, but a couple of things that I was kind of iffy on were, like I mentioned earlier, I do think that there are some parts of this movie, some themes of the movie that I don't feel like get as deeply as explored as they could have, and not necessarily like the backstory of the grabber, but I think that once we actually get to Finney's capture with the grabber, it never feels particularly dangerous, and it never feels particularly scary because he doesn't see the ghosts, which if he was a kid trapped in a room seeing ghosts all over the place, that would be pretty terrifying. But really, he spends most of the time in that room alone, and when the grabber does come in, it's like, yeah, he has a sinister conversation with him, but we never get to see like the threats that the kids are talking about, like, oh, he's going to beat the shit out of you. And those are things where I'm like, okay, maybe the movie didn't want to go that far, but I do think that they really could have driven home some more of the danger of the grabber, because
you could have caught him a couple times trying to set up like some of these what end up eventually being deadly Home Alone traps.
Yeah, and it almost felt like the movie was trying to say the outside world is way more terrifying than anything the grabber could throw at this kid, because he gets beat to shit and bullied so much. His father is super abusive, and so by the time he gets to the grabber, it's like a vacation, like hanging out in this room. He's just getting phone call after phone call, just chatting it up with ghosts.
Eggs and Sprite, baby.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted the grabber stuff to be more threatening.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
and it just didn't feel like he was as threatening a presence as he potentially could have been.
I didn't love that he dug this hole and he's like, yeah, dig your hole, get out. And then he gets a huge hole, but then stops. I'm like, well, why didn't you keep going? Was there some reason not to keep going? I know it comes into play later, which makes it make sense, but for a while I was like, why did you stop if you're good to go?
I think he keeps getting calls that
Yeah.
say no, do this thing, do the thing with the window, no, do the thing with the freezer.
That's another thing that I'll say is that the movie does in a couple in the first act, it gets a little bit repetitive in that it's a long buildup of him just going to school, getting bullied, going to school, getting bullied. His sister has a dream, and we know he's going to get grabbed because we've seen the trailer. We know what the movie's about. So it goes a pretty long time and starts to get to the point where I'm like, okay, when is something going to happen? And I do like that it's attempting to build out that dread, and it's really dread. But then you get into the second half of the movie, and again, it's like, okay, phone call. They tell him to do something. It doesn't work. Phone call. They tell him to do something. It doesn't work. Phone call. And I get that, like, at the end, like you said, it all comes back together, and it's rewarding when every single thing that the kids told him, he's able to, like you said, home alone together. But as it's going, it starts to get a bit frustrating to be like, okay, well, now he got the grate off the window, which then just vanishes, and the grabber never says anything about why is that not on the window anymore? What did you do? Did you try to get out?
Why
That's
is this
never
rug down on
addressed.
the
Yeah, why is
floor?
this rug on the floor? Which makes the grabber feel less threatening. I feel like there could have been a couple more moments where he walks down and says, like, oh, you were planning that shit? Guess what? Never mind. And
The only explanation I could think of is his brother's there, so he's already kind of like, what the fuck is going on?
That's what's supposed to be. So in the short story, they make it very heavily seem like his brother is there. He doesn't want him there, and that's the reason why he keeps going away.
Okay.
oh, and is that why he's saying nothing's going as planned? Is because
Yeah.
his brother was there?
Yeah, his brother's
And because
there.
the kid won't play along with the naughty boy thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, maybe we can write some of that off, but
But I still think that there's
agree.
not as much payoff until that moment where everything comes together at the end.
Yeah.
I feel like the feedback loop could have been a little more impactful. There could have been, like I said, potentially a little more violence. The story could have been a little different. It could have been a little more harrowing, him getting some of these things put together. And I still think that what we get at the end is still a really great result. I mean,
love when a story like introduces a ton of elements and then somehow is able to work them all into the ending in a way that feels satisfactory. And I was almost scared that it wasn't going to happen because once the brother started coming downstairs, I was like, well, he's obviously going to get got. But I thought I thought he was going to accidentally get killed by the kid. Or like,
So did I, yeah.
Yeah, and that it was going to spoil all of this planning that he had done. And then I was like, well, then what were 10 dozen phone calls about? But luckily, that's not the way things go, and they do have a big showdown and everything, and it is satisfying. I did feel like the stuff with the brother, while it adds an interesting wrinkle to why things are going wrong with the grabber, I thought that he was the most like campy, cartoony part of the movie, and he didn't fit as much.
he could have easily been Bruce Campbell. He had the mustache.
Well, I
was like, he could
I
have been
really
Bruce
like James
Campbell.
Ransone because I loved him in It Chapter 2. He's the one that gets fucking stabbed in the face.
Yeah.
And he's like, he tells what's his face to get rid of the mullet or whatever. And so I like him, and I just felt like his character was like so out of place in this movie and so goofy. And so as soon as he like walked down to the basement, I knew he was gonna get killed, and get surprised like, oh my gosh, you want me to tell you the story of how I found you?
It's
Shut the
literally
fuck up.
it's literally beat for beat from the story.
I also kind of had a problem with Finn and Gwen's dad at the end because he obviously
I'm like, no,
has,
you're a fucking monster.
well,
And-
yeah, he's a monster. He obviously has a disease, right?
Mhm.
He has alcoholism, which is
Yeah.
a disease, and then obviously there's other stuff going on top of that where he feels this need to be abusive and probably some mental issues with the loss of his wife, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And then at the end he's just like, I'm sorry, we're good now. And I'm like, that's not real. I don't know. I mean, I guess I've never been through that, so I don't know the epiphany that you may or may not have had. Obviously, this is a heightened situation where your kid was grabbed, but I just felt like they did a little bit of a disservice to that aspect of it.
Yeah, because it reminded me again of Split, where at the end you want Anya Taylor-Joy's character to get out of that situation with her like abusive uncle or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think they leave it kind of ambiguous in that too, what decision she makes, and then you find out in Glass that she like got out of that situation and blah 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 blah. But you want that character, if they're going to introduce that wrinkle of them being in some sort of abusive like family situation, you want them once they get through their like horrific trauma to then be able to like be like, and now I'm free of this. And it's almost more realistic that the dad would come in and be like, hey, I found you, and then we don't know. He could just keep abusing them. I mean, really, it's hard for me to believe that he would just be like, after his kids got kidnapped.
Well,
but-
especially with with substance abuse of any kind, it's almost impossible to get out of that hole. So I think that it could be just back to the same thing. I would have loved to even get a scene where he comes up to him and he's like no, like you need to treat us better or whatever, and like makes him kind of uses some of this newfound confidence from what he's done.
Right, yeah.
And I think that could add a little extra.
Instead of just, call me Finn. I was
Call
like,
me
oh,
Finn,
I thought you were going to stand
man.
up to your dad. Now you're just trying to get laid.
Yeah.
It's like, all right.
Thinking with his teenage dick.
Yeah.
And then the one last thing that I was a little bit iffy on, I think, was just how the sister's storyline and her powers ended up tying into everything. It almost felt like two different stories. Which, I mean, does the story have her with the powers, or does it mention that? Or
It doesn't mention any of that. There's not enough time in the short story to mention any of that. It just basically mentions that she's like riding around town and that she's seen the black balloons and all this other shit.
Yeah, which I think could have worked just fine without her having the dreams and the powers, because then it seems kind of goofy when the detectives are just like, yo, did you have a dream? And then they start following her around town.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get that that's kind of a reversal on what we see in every other movie where somebody has powers, but I'm like, it's just so unbelievable. And I would have liked it more if, yeah, she was just riding around town and she happened to see the balloon, or she worked it out some way herself, because we're buying the kind of the unexplained supernatural stuff with the black phone, and then also we're saying this girl also has some sort of psychic powers, and in the end it didn't feel like her having those powers helped him get out of his situation. He still got out of it by himself and just happened to be across the street from the house that she found. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's cool that she found the bodies and that they're in a separate house, but even the fact that the two things are happening in separate houses felt like, and now we're ending these two separate stories in these two separate places.
Right.
And it never really felt like it gelled together in a way that made a lot of sense.
I think along those same lines, the grabber doesn't seem to be hiding his van, or the fact that he's a magician, or the fact that he has black balloons. Like, there's even a shot from outside where his van's just in the driveway.
Yeah, when
like
Finney saw him, I was like, you've been talking about this grabber dude for a while. Would you not freak out when you see this guy like come stumbling out in like face paint and a black hat and everything? And he doesn't freak out until the balloons come out of the car, which is a fucking scary scene when he gets snatched.
Yeah.
But I was just like, you wouldn't be at all suspicious about this guy you've never seen before in town.
Don't be suspicious.
But anyway, that's not to say that I didn't have a good time with it. I enjoyed it. I don't think it's. I mean, I wouldn't say that I like it more than Sinister. I think Sinister is still higher up there for me, and I'd have to rewatch Emily Rose. But I think it was better than Doctor Strange.
I thought it was a good time. I mean, like I said, it's not a perfect film. We obviously have our gripes, but they don't detract nearly as much as us talking about it seems to let on in some of these situations. Like, It was still an enjoyable film, and I had a good time. Would definitely see it again.
Yeah, I would watch it again in theaters. Even. Like, I would pay again for it.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't pay this time, but I would pay.
So typically, in the end of our episodes, we will rate things out of a scale of five somethings. This time, we're going to do let's rate it out of 5 killer Kevin McAllisters.
Okay. All right. I will say 3.5 out of 5 killer Kevin McAllisters, just because I felt like some things had a disservice and it didn't always quite add up in the way I wanted to, but it had great scares, soundtrack was fantastic, and the performances from Ethan Hawke and the kids I thought were great.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm maybe closer to a 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, I had a great time with it. I felt like the relationships between all the characters were believable, at least for the most part. I think that save for maybe that moment at the end, I felt like maybe that could have been done a little better, but I felt like everything pays off really well at the end, with all of the stuff kind of Rube Goldberging their way together for this like pretty harrowing moment at the end where he's just beating the fuck out of Ethan Hawke. Again, the mask design, I thought it was going to be stupid based on the trailers, and getting to see how it really is applied is just fucking Tom Savini.
The CEO at Spirit Halloween's like, ooh,
we're going to sell so many multi-part masks.
Yeah, they get twice as much money.
But yeah, I dug it.
I'm also at around a 3.5. I was kind of teetering between a 3 and a 3.5, but I think after we talked about it and some of the things that we really liked about it, I think I'm sitting at a 3.5. I was happy that the movie did a something that was close to the 80s without doing another fucking like 80s extravaganza Stranger Things type movie. It felt very much in the same lane as Scott Derrickson's other stuff. It didn't make me any less excited to see what he continues doing, and I just wish that there was a bit more Ethan Hawke and that things tied together a little bit better in the end. But yeah, I would definitely go see it again, and I'm looking forward to it coming on streaming so I can watch it from the comfort of my home where I can pee whenever I want.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. If you're interested in more, we have an episode on Everything Everywhere All at Once that seems to be a fan favorite, so we would highly recommend you check that out. Also, we have stuff on Patreon if that interests you, and we just got the regular podcast, too. That is a ton of fun. We do news, we do trivia, we do our main discussion, we cover movies and TV shows and all kinds of crazy shit. So if you like this, then we think that you probably like that.
Yeah, so go ahead and give us a subscribe and check out some of our other episodes. There's a ton of great shit in there.
Ring the bell.
Ding,
like,
ding, ding.
Like it's Long John Silver's. Remember that? Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. So what am I supposed to say? Thanks for coming. And thanks for coming.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Keep it creepy.